All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Look, from the smartphone in your pocket to the literal global balance of power, one single topic is completely defining our era. Today, we're going to unpack exactly how the geopolitical rivalry between the United States and China is shaping the future of artificial intelligence. And honestly, it's doing so in some incredibly surprising ways. We're going to map out why these two superpowers are fighting tooth and nail for the future, and how their totally distinct strategies are sending them down entirely different technological paths.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of what we're looking at here, let's just play a little comparison game. Take the entire 13-year Apollo space race budget. Adjusted for inflation, that sits at about $326 billion. Okay, now compare that to the massive amount that just 5 American tech companies are expected to spend on AI in 2026 alone. We are talking about $450 billion in a single year, and that's largely driven by companies like Meta, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, and Oracle.
So why the astronomical price tag? Well, industry leaders believe whoever crosses the finish line first isn't just winning a standard technology race. Just listen to Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google DeepMind. He stated that leading AI systems are soon going to exhibit all human cognitive capabilities, making the AI revolution, quote, 10 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution and maybe 10 times faster. Whoever gets there first doesn't just invent a cool new gadget. They basically write the operating system for the future of humanity.
But you can't build the software of tomorrow without the hardware of today. Which brings us to Section 1, the hardware battleground, the fight for AI chips.
You see, the crucial point here is that both nations completely recognize that the physical cornerstone of literally all AI progress relies entirely on access to highly advanced microchips. Back in a 2018 report, Tsinghua University in Beijing hit the nail on the head when they put it in these incredibly stark terms. No chip, no AI. These chips are the irreplaceable physical foundation for the algorithms, the databases, and all that raw computing power. And to maintain its lead, the United States has leaned hard into a targeted choke point strategy. They are actively restricting China's access to both the chips themselves and the incredibly complex machines required to actually build them. This even includes lobbying to stop the Dutch company ASML from exporting essential manufacturing systems to China. And at the exact same time, the US is pouring tens of billions of dollars into subsidizing its own domestic semiconductor production through the CHIPS Act.
And that massive hardware squeeze pushes us right into Section 2, Strategies Diverge, Brute Force versus Efficiency.
This is where the story gets really fascinating. As highlighted in a Brookings Institution testimony, we're actually watching two completely different races being run right now. While American hyperscalers are throwing hundreds of billions of dollars at building massive gigawatt-scale data centers to achieve AGI using brute force compute, China is playing a totally different game. Because of their restricted access to top-tier hardware, Chinese developers have had to pivot. They are focusing heavily on extreme software efficiency, widespread adoption, and creatively overcoming those exact hardware constraints. Honestly, necessity really is the mother of invention here. This constraint has led Chinese labs to aggressively push the boundaries of engineering techniques like quantization. Now, quantization basically allows engineers to use less precise data formats like 4-bit to heavily compress AI models. What does that mean for us? It means these models can run effectively on much less computing power with really minimal performance loss. It's a perfect example of how American restrictions actually forced a completely different vector of innovation over in the Chinese tech sector. So how does all this tech actually hit the streets? Section 3, Ruling the Real World. Physical AI integration. Let's think about how this plays out in, say, public governance. The source material paints a very stark contrast. In the US, the approach is highly decentralized, taking more of a risk management angle. The focus is mostly on isolated, agency-led pilots and ethical safeguards, like the AI Bill of Rights, to protect democratic values. China, conversely, treats AI as a macro tool for centralized state modernization. They are integrating it deeply into systemic workflows and predictive urban management.
Looking at this academic breakdown from the ACAD Lore Journal, it perfectly maps out the divide. The U.S. focuses on highly specific agency experiments, prioritizing things like, specific fraud detection or healthcare optimization. Meanwhile, China is actively weaving generative AI directly into the very fabric of its smart cities, policing, and justice workflows to achieve predictive governance on a massive, system-wide scale.
But China isn't just stopping at digital governance. They are laser-focused on what's known as embodied AI. We're talking about taking AI and giving it a physical body. Chinese robot maker Unitree shipped over 5,000 humanoid robots last year alone. Major EV makers like NIO and Xiaomi are actively experimenting with deploying humanoid robots right onto their assembly lines, and Beijing is backing this whole thing up with a staggering $138 billion national venture capital fund that prioritizes robotics.
And yes, this deep integration absolutely extends into the military domain as well. The sources describe China's pursuit of an intelligentized AI warfare strategy. Rather than just traditional operations, they view AI as a massive force multiplier for decision-making. The goal is to deploy autonomous systems, drone swarms, and AI-driven cognitive warfare across land, sea, cyber, and cognitive domains, all to close the military gap with powers like the United States.
So, with two completely different playbooks, who's actually winning? Let's look at Section 4, the Global Adoption War. Who controls the market?
Well, if you look at a recent report from the RAND Corporation, it seems like a total blowout. As of mid-2025, American large language models are just absolutely dominating the market. They are capturing a staggering 93% of worldwide use. So, on paper, the US clearly holds the commanding lead at the technological frontier right now.
But we really have to ask ourselves, is this overwhelming American market dominance actually built on a fragile foundation? Realistically, for how long can they maintain this 93% grip on the global user base?
Because what's unfolding right now looks a whole lot like a Trojan horse strategy. Remember that forced focus on extreme efficiency? Well, China is now exporting highly capable, completely free open-weight models like Alibaba's Qwen and DeepSeek R1. And get this, these models are actually surpassing US counterparts in downloads on developer platforms like Hugging Face. Because they offer top-tier performance at little to no cost, they're seeing massive adoption in emerging markets across Africa and Japan. And incredibly, because of US embargoes, making domestic development so expensive, even Silicon Valley startups and major American companies like Airbnb are now relying on Chinese open-weight models to power their tools. It's a real game changer.
Which brings us to our final and maybe most critical point, Section 5, self-fulfilling, the AI Cold War narrative.
We really have to step back and ask, is the hype totally real? Experts cited an MIT technology review in Nature, along with researchers like Joanna Bryson, are actually waving a red flag here. They warn that this intense geopolitical framing might just be a self-fulfilling prophecy. They argue it's potentially being pushed by big tech companies who want to utilize the Cold War panic to avoid onerous safety regulations and essentially secure government subsidies and deregulation, all under the guise of national security.
Because treating this whole thing purely as a zero-sum conflict, that carries massive, real-world risks. It threatens to break down vital international scientific collaboration. It risks promoting a global race to the bottom regarding AI ethics, where safety is just sacrificed for speed. And most concerningly of all, it acts as a catalyst for a genuine, escalating autonomous military arms race that, frankly, nobody actually wants.
And that leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative thought to take away from this explainer today. As these two global powers race toward the future, pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into silicon and code, are we fighting an inevitable AI Cold War? Or by framing every single development as a geopolitical battle for survival, are we simply speaking one into existence? It's a crucial question for the future of our digital and physical world. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.